Okay, yeah, welcome back. Right, so we'll continue with our installation. We have done a quick restart of our system. So we're going to pick on SQL Server. First, if there's any prompt that comes up on your system, you just say yes. Then you must as well be an administrator. You must have an administrator account on your laptop to be able to do the installation. Right, so you'll be prompted with this asking whether basic, custom, or download media. So just pick on the basic option, then click on accept.
You are not sharing your screen.
Oh, sorry. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so
Thank you.
Yeah, so you can allow the default location for installation. This is fine. So just simply create a folder in your programs folder, and that's where most installation go to. So you just click on install, right? So once you click on install, you just give it some time. The installation takes some minutes, roughly 3 to 5 minutes. So we'll just give it some time to install. And then you also need to be online to complete the installation, because while it's installing, it's downloading some softwares needed for the installation. You can see it saying download successful, installing, and then the installation is going on. So for some reasons, maybe because the operating system is not the required OS, or maybe because there are some conflicting installation on the laptop, or sometimes maybe because of the security softwares, like McAfee sometimes does not allow installation of some resource, right? Or it could also be because you're on a private network and some softwares are not allowed to be downloaded, or it doesn't allow downloads of executable files. So for some various reasons, your installation might not go through, and it will usually come back with a error log file, or a log file to ask you to view the reasons for failed installation. So in case you experience that, you can just click on the file. It will open up in a notepad for you, save the file, and then send the file to me. You can as well open the file yourself and read through. The log file is just a text-based file that records every steps of the installation. So as it's installing, each of the steps of the installation is being logged into a file. So if there's an error, what the first place to go to is to go to the log file to see what the error is. Then you can now start checking for the solution for the error, right? If everything is fine, your installation will go through successfully. So the installation is almost complete. We'll just wait for it to complete successfully. In case you missed the last training, the last class, you might go back to listen to the video. It's on the YouTube channel. In the video, we talked about databases and the need for SQL, and we also compared SQL to Excel and why we need to use SQL rather than Excel to working with our data. So that's the reason why we're installing SQL. Then we also have various SQL databases options. We have Microsoft SQL Server. We have MySQL software. We also have Oracle SQL Server that ships with Oracle software applications. So you can choose any one of these, but Microsoft SQL is preferable because it easily ships with most Microsoft applications and many organizations use it. It's very popular. So now we can see on our screen that installation has completed successfully, right? I would just explain briefly what you're seeing on your screen. It will make sense to you along the line later on. You have instance name. So this instance name is a default instance name given by this installation. And you can have more than one database installation on your system, right? But it will be differentiated by their instance name. So for this first instance name, it has given it a default name, SQL Express. I can choose to install an additional instance, meaning I want to have maybe 2 or more databases for different purposes on the same computer. Organizations do that for different reasons. Or let's say it's let's say you're running a centralized database server and you want to have your databases differentiated. You can have several instances of such. Then connection string is used for connecting to your data source from other applications. So for instance, if you are developing and you are using another tool, or it could even be from another data source tool, right? And you want to connect to your database or to this instance, you need to specify this connection string. Then, of course, is listing the SQL administrator for this instance here. The feature installed, it has installed SQL engine for you. Then this is the version of the SQL that has been installed. Then if you want to view the log file, right, you can go to this place. It will show you the logs. Then logs, you have logs for every day. So as you continue to use your database, every steps or action that is going on within the database is logged. So for you to, okay, let me just click this so see the log folder. Okay, so I have various logs here because I have installed this before. So if you go to this log folder now, you see various text documents showing you different logs, right, for your SQL server. You also have this installation media folder. I don't really have much information on this. Then you have the installation resource folder as well. So this shows that our SQL is complete. For you to confirm that the software is well installed, you can click on Connect Now. Connect Now would open up SQL Server for you, but in command prompt. So you can type SQL scripts here, but of course, it's boring. You are typing in a command prompt environment. So for instance, let me just do a simple command. We can do the same command we are seeing here. You can say select at version. For the command to execute, you have to type go. Right, so has executed this command. It has given me the version of SQL that I've installed. So SQL Server 2019, and then the time and date installed. I can write another command. Let's say select the name. So anytime you put a command here, you have to type go. Then you also must know the command that you want to type in there. Okay, let's check this up. SQL command or select underscore D. Oh, okay. I was not putting the open and close brackets. Okay, so the command is executed. I just simply put select DB name, open and close brackets. It will show me the list of databases in my SQL Server. So it's just one now. I have the default database, which is the master database. So you can type in SQL commands here, right, at SQL command prompt, but this is not an interesting way to use SQL. You would rather want to use the GUI interface. So the GUI interface is your SQL Management Studio. So we're done with installing SQL Server software. So to install the Management Studio, we just come to the second download and double click. You can see that the installation is seamless as long as the requirements are met. So you just allow it click on the default location too, right? And then you allow the installation go through. Yeah, is anyone following through with this installation and or trying to install now? Or if you have installed and you have SQL
Yes.
Server Management Studio, just say yes.
Yes, I've installed and I have the server management software.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other person?
Yes, I've installed.
Yeah, you can ask your question. At least someone is raising hand. You can ask your question. At least the installation is going on and nothing is happening. So yeah, let's please ask your question. Okay, any other comments? Did anybody have any? Is anybody having any issue with installation currently? I know someone had issue yesterday, but it has been resolved. It is now installed on his laptop. But if any other person is having issue, you can speak up now. Okay, fine. We can see that our SQL Server Management Studio installation is complete. So you just close, and then to confirm that you have it on your system, you just come to your start prompt here and look for SQL Server. So you can check for it under Microsoft folder. Yeah, so this is it. You have Microsoft SQL Server 2019. This is the software. Then you also have Microsoft SQL Server Tools. So you find Management Studio here under Tools. There are some other tools that also ships with it that are installed already for you. And then for the software, you find the configuration management tool. Later on, I'm going to tell you what this is for and how to use it. Then you also have the error and usage reporting. Then you have import and export tool. And we are going to use this shortly. Then you also have the Microsoft SQL Server Installation Center. So you have 4 items under SQL Server 2019 folder. Right, so let's just go to the Management Studio, right, and then look at some of the features there. So just click on SQL Server Management Studio. Okay, fine. So, right, once it's open, it's going to show you this prompt. You have the server type, database engine. You can also have analysis, services, reporting, and some other engines as well. But our focus for today is the database engine. Then it's showing you the server name, which is as well the instance name. Remember, it's installed a default instance, SQL Server Express. So you must check to ensure that you are in the right instance. In case you have more than one database instance installed on your system, you can come here to pick the instance you want. I have 2, right? But I'm going to pick the one I want, which is the SQL Server instance, Express instance. Then you have 2 types of authentication. You can authenticate as a current logon user, right? So if the Windows logged on user is the same user for the administrative access for the software, it would show you, it will allow you log on with Windows authentication. But you have a second option. You can log on with SQL Server authentication. SQL Server authentication will allow you to log in with login details that have been profiled on SQL Server. And remember, we mentioned in the database class that you can have multiple users use the database. So you can create multiple users that can access the database, and then they can log on from here using a login name and password that's been provided for them. So in this case, we want to use the Windows authentication. So you just click on connect. Right. So once you connect, you have on the right, on the left-hand side, sorry, you have your Object Explorer. Your Object Explorer is like your menu list for all your data tools. Your Object Explorer contains database, security, server objects, and so on and so forth. So under security here, you can create login roles. So I can come here and create a new login role that can log on to my database. So the default logon is Windows authentication. I can come here to create a username and password for other credentials that I want to be able to log into my instance. So whatever I create here, I'll be able to give to other people or use as a login to the instance. So that's what the logins folder is for. So after logging in, you can assign roles to whoever is logged on here, right? These are various roles, so you can, okay, yeah, you create the roles here. Then when creating the login, you can assign the roles here. We're not going to go into the details of that. It's just for us to know. Okay, so our focus should be on databases, right? So for you to know what's in the databases, you just simply expand on the database folder. Let me increase this view so you can see more. Okay, hold on. I'm trying to increase this view so it can be, I don't want to make it full screen. Okay, let's continue. So our focus should be on databases, right? And for you to create a new database, you just simply right-click on databases, then click new. Once you click new, right, you can come here to create a database. So you just give a database name. So for our first class, we can just create a test DB. So when creating your database name, avoid putting space like test DB. So avoid putting a space in your naming. If you must have a space in between, instead of the space, you can use something like an hyphen or an underscore like this to name your database. So let's create a database. Let's call it test underscore database. Okay, fine. So your database is usually created in two files. The first file name is usually a data file, And then the second one is usually a log file. You can choose to rename your database here as well, or here. The data file and the log file must be in the same location, right? So you can see here that the file type for your data file is your data rows. So it contains the content of your data, of your database. Then the second file is the log file. Anytime you hear log file, just understand that it is used to log actions of the software. Whatever is going on in the software is logged in there, right? So that's the essence of this log file, right? You can as well see some other information: primary file group, initial size 8 MB. As the data file continues to receive more data, the size will of course continue to increase. So your initial size is 8 MB. You can come here later on to see your file growth, how much it has become. Then my focus is on this part here. This part simply shows you the location of your database file and your log file. Remember, I said they must be in the same location, right? So you can see, I can decide to change my file path to some other place. I don't want it to store here. The reason why it's better to change the file path is because whenever you uninstall the software, right, your default folders too would as well be deleted, right? So if I'm uninstalling SQL Server now, the Microsoft SQL folder in my programs file will be deleted, and once it's deleted, I won't have access to the files, that were put in that default location anymore. But if I don't want that, I would come to change the location here. I can put it in I can create a new folder for that and put it in there. Okay, you can't create the folder here. You must have created the folder before. So let me go to my C drive and create a new folder. So in my C drive now, I'm going to create a new folder and call it database files. Right, so if I go back here now, I am going to, you just simply refresh by expanding again. So C folder, I'm looking for database files. Okay, it's not showing. So let's close and reopen. Open. So my C folder, then database file. You can see the folder I just created, database file. Of course, it will contain nothing, but I want the file stored here. So I'm going to select it and say OK. So this is my path, my new location for my data file. Of course, the log file must be in the same location. So I'm just going to copy and paste here, or come here and select the same folder again. Right. So now that I have it, I'm just going to say OK. Okay, so now that you have it, you are just going to say OK. If you click on add, it will prompt you to add another database, but I'm not adding another database, so I'll just say OK. Okay, fine. So now you can see that my database is created. I have a database called test database. So under test database, I'm going to have these folders, the database diagrams, tables, views, and the rest of that. our focus is on tables. Let's go to tables. Remember, database is a collection of tables. So under tables, you can choose to create a new table, and you can also bring in external data into your database. Today, we will be bringing external data from Excel. But before we do that, let me show us how to create a table. To create a table, you just you just right click on table and then say new and table. Okay, so a table is similar to a worksheet in Excel, and it will have several columns and the rest of that. But in this case, you need to define your column headers, or the data you want to store in there, you need to define the column header for it. So let's assume we want to create a table for students. So students is a subject. Remember what I told you about subject and features. So your student is a subject, and you must think of the characteristics for that student. That will form the kind of data you want to collect about the student. So a student will have a unique identification, which we can say student ID. So student ID will be our first field name. And then for you to define a column header, you must tell us the type. The type is simply asking what is the type of data that will be stored in that column. So for you to define the type, you click on the down arrow and pick the one that is relevant. So a student ID can be a number, right? Like student ID 2021-12, right? But at times your student ID can contain other characters like slash or letters. So we would rather not pick a number, we would pick a string. I should also explain to you the different data type and their meaning. So you have big int. Big int is simple. Anytime you see int is referring to integer numbers. Integer numbers are of course whole numbers. So big int means you're having a number that is maybe a large value number, right? Then binary is numbers in binary numbers. That's just the simplest way to put it. Then bit is either 0 or 1, right? And then you have char. Char is 1 character value. So if your field is just going to have 1 character, you can use char. Then you have the date type of field. That's for storing dates. You have date time for date and time. You have date and time too. Maybe, I don't know, that might be for an extended date time. You have date time set off. You have decimal for decimal values or float values. You have decimal, you have float. You have various kinds of data types. Let's not go into that. You have image as well, but just look for int or look for varchar. So the varchar.
Good. Okay, that's what I wanted to ask, that can we just use variable character so that it will take any form?
Exactly. So that's what we'll be using variable character. You have the end varchar, you have the varchar. Most times I just prefer to use the varchar. So you have the varchar 50. Whenever you see anything within the bracket, that's just telling you the limit to the number of characters that can be there. So here, this one can have limits to 50. This one can have unlimited number of characters. So if you are storing something like a paragraph, you can use max, but in this case, we are going to use varchar 50, right? So you have this other definition one. Allow null means that you can have missing values within that field. If you don't want to have missing values, then you ensure that this is checked, right? So this way, if there will be any missing value, it will not allow that record or that row to be saved. So that's student ID. So let's create another one. We can call that student name. Student name will, of course, to be a varchar. So we do var varchar. To move from to move across the column, you can just use your tab key, right? So I don't want student name as well to be missing or empty, so I'll leave this null as checked. I will have student age. Student age will definitely be an integer, right? So I'm just going to pick int. It can be missing. I may have student age, I may not have it, so I'll uncheck. I can have student level. This can be a varchar as well, maybe level 1, level 2, honors, whatever. Okay, so this can be missing too. I may not have it, and so on and so forth. So let's just say we want to create a table that has these 4 columns. So once you are done, you just click on save. Yeah, when you click on save, it will prompt you for a student name. So I can call this, for a table name, I can call this student list or whatever. When naming the table as well, avoid space in your naming. Instead of space, you can use underscore or hyphen. So just do OK. Once you do OK, you have your table created. Okay, so my table is already created, and how do I know? The table name here has changed. And if I want to confirm, I'll just come here and right-click and do a refresh. Then expand on tables, right? So you can see your table created here. Your created table, you can see it here. You can view the columns in your tables. Then you can check on keys, constraints. I'm going to tell us later on as we go on in the course what these keys, constraint, triggers are used for. So now that you have your table created, you want to put in some data to your table. To do that, you right-click on the table itself and then click on table. Oh no, sorry. You right-click and click on edit. Sorry, you have to edit. So I can say edit. Yeah, so once I do edit, I can come and enter. I can do some data entry directly into my table. So let's do 1 or 2 data entries. So to do this, my student ID, let's say I have 2021 slash AA slash 001 tab. Okay, so there's an error. Okay, whenever you have this symbol, is simply telling you there's an information for you to check. It could be an error, it could be a warning, it could be a prompt. So you just need to check. And to check it, you just mouse over it. So you can see it's telling us that this cell has changed, but the change has not been committed to the database. So if you close this, you lose this data because the data is not committed yet to the database. So let's continue. Let's put in, let me expand this. Okay, so let's put in a student name. So that's our student name. Let's put in age. Let's put in level. So the data is committed now that the row is complete. Let's try something else again. Let's try to put in data and okay, so if you skip putting student's name, remember we said student's name is compulsory, shouldn't be missing. So let's skip student's name and see the message you would have. So student name is compulsory, but student's age can be missing. Let's say we miss the student's age as well, but we put in a level. If you want to leave this row now, it will not allow you. It's going to come up with an error message saying that the row cannot be updated, and it will give you the reason. Now you can see the reason saying column does not allow null, right? So student list column does not allow null. So the statement has been terminated, right? So you can set boundaries, when using SQL Server. So those are some interesting things you can do. So we've seen how to create a table and how to populate a table with entries. In most cases, you don't want to do this because it's very strenuous, right? You'd likely have your data from some source, maybe some secondary source, or from Excel, because it's easier to type in Excel than to even type here. In Excel, you can easily move across your data sheets and your rows and columns. So most times people will just create their data in Excel, and then import into SQL Server. So let's see quickly, before we wrap up for today's class, how to import from Excel into SQL Server. To do that, we'll just minimize this, then call up the import-export facility that was shipped with our SQL Server Tools. Go to your start, then look for Microsoft SQL Server, the Microsoft SQL Server Tools. Okay, Microsoft SQL Server. Then click on import and export data. Click on it. So it will pop up a wizard. So click on next. Right, so you are going to have to indicate the data source. In this case, our data source is Excel. So I'm just going to pick on the source type, Microsoft Excel. Right, so upon picking the source type, you have to go and pick the file from whatever location it is. So I'm going to pick on an Excel file. I'm going to use this one. So I'll just highlight on it and say open. Right, so it's going to indicate the Excel version for me. And if the version is different, I can change the version type here. Then if your SQL data has the first row as columns, you can indicate here. If not, you can as well turn this off. So you come and then click next. So now you need to indicate the destination. This tool can be used for import and export from various data sources. I can use it for Excel into SQL. I can use it for importing SQL table from my SQL into Excel. That's the other way around, right? And I can use it for any other data sources too, as long as it's listed here. So it's a separate tool, but it ships with Microsoft SQL Server. So here I'm going to indicate the destination data source. In this case, it's going to be SQL Server. So this is what you pick. You pick SQL Server native client. Right. Of course, it needs to authorize that you have access to that database. Right. So if you are a login user, you need to use this. And in my own case, I'm an administrator user, and I as well have administrator user on that software. So I'm just going to use my Windows authentication. Then you also need to confirm your server name. Of course, you've seen the instance that was installed on your database. So you just need to confirm that it's the same instance that is picked here. If you need to change the instance, you just click on the down arrow. It will show you the list of instances on your database client that you've picked, and you can indicate the one you want. Okay, so I have just one instance here indicated. So here as well, I'm going to, once this connection is right, if you click on this database, it will show you the list of databases. But if your connection here is not right, for one reason or the other, maybe you are using a wrong user or a wrong instance, you will not be able to see the list of databases. So if the connection is right, once you click on this, it will show you all your databases within your instance. You can see my database that I just created is indicated, so I'm going to pick on that. So I just click on next. You can just leave this default at copy data from one or more tables of views, right? In this case, you want to customize your copy, you want to write a script for it, but for the basic copy, you can just leave it at the first instance. So you click on next, right? So now, remember when we were doing Excel, we mentioned that sheets in Excel are synonymous to tables, right? And you can have many tables within Excel. So Excel as well is a database kind of tool, right? Because when you have many sheets in your Excel, yeah, it's like you having many tables that form a database, right? So these sheets as well, when you are bringing it into SQL Server, they ship into SQL Server as separate tables. I can decide to pick all the sheets, which is what I'll prefer to do now. So I can just click on select all, and I can decide to select a few of them. Okay, let's say I want just click, sorry, okay. So I can decide to pick maybe the ones I want, right? Then the first column is showing you the source, which is what you have in your Excel. The second column is showing you the destination, which is what will be created in SQL Server for you, right? So if you leave it at this default name, it will create your tables as this default name. I don't like this default name because it contains space, then it contains sheet name. So I'd rather create my tables as proper naming. Like I want to have customers table. I also want to have products table. Your table name should as well be descriptive, right? So use a table name that when next you come to that database, or if someone else other than you is accessing the database, it would make meaning to them. So I have sales orders. I want to have it as sales orders. If I don't want space, I can use hyphen. Then sales team as well, I would use hyphen. Then location sheet as well, store locations, right? As well, I would use hyphen. So you just click next. Okay, sorry. Let me show us about edit mapping. So you can also want to do some checks on your tables. You can want to check the data type. You can do that from edit mapping. So in the edit mapping, you are seeing the source column names, the destination column names. You can define what you want, just like you have in SQL Server, like, okay, whether it's nullable or not, then you define the size and all that. Usually it will come as a default. So sometimes, let's say your column name default size is 255, right? This might be too much for column names, and you want to save memory space, because the more the size, the more the memory space. I can come here and reduce the size. Oh, my column names may not be more than 50. I can just put the size and then say okay, right? So you can come to edit mappings to do some checks on all this, and to also check your destination rows and columns. You can, from these column names as well, rename your destination rows and columns. So for instance, I may want to change my column names to appear differently. So I can change them here. If not, I can just leave it as it is, and then just do okay. So you just continue, say next, then you can do finish. So once you click on finish, it will copy your data from Excel into SQL Server. So this is complete. You do a close. So once that is successfully completed, sometimes you might have errors. If you have errors there, I'm sorry, I already closed that window, but in case you have errors there, you are going to see the error log file as well, and can as well check the details in the error log files. So we'll go back to our SQL Server now and check up on our database. So these are students list table that we created on our own. For us to see the tables that have just been imported, I can come to table and do a refresh. Right click and click refresh. So now you can see the tables that we imported: products table, regions table, and so on and so forth. Okay. Oops, I forgot to remove the quotes on my table name, so it's still showing as quotes here. Right. I want to remove it now. I'll right click and I'll say rename and remove those quotes. Right, so you can as well rename from here. We'll rename the rest later. So these are our tables, right? So to view the contents on our tables, you just right click and then click on edit. So these are the contents in our tables. These are the contents in our tables, same as what we have in the Excel. I clicked on edit, so I'm in an edit mode. So in this edit mode, I can change the values in my table. I can say, okay, make these distributors, and it will save. You can see I've been able to change one of the contents in my table, right? So I can also view the content in my table using a select command. Select commands are scripts written in SQL. SQL is a standard way of, getting data and from your database. So it's a standard way of communicating with data values in your database. Okay, so if you click on this select top 1000 rows, it's going to write the SQL command for you and then display the data. So a select command allows the user to view data. So at this point, I can't edit data here. I can't edit data. If I try to type, it will not allow me, right? But I can edit my script. So tomorrow and in our next classes, we are going to learn how to start writing these scripts ourselves, and how to use it to communicate with data. So I'm going to stop the class for today here, and then we'll continue tomorrow. Thank you all for listening.